Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. I'm suffocating my trust into a pillow. That's the image in my head. No dramatic music, no drawn-out metaphor, just the plain, cold fact. Everything I believed about my marriage is pinned down, strangled under my own hands. It's quiet here in the bedroom as I do it, and I can almost feel the threads of my illusions ripping apart beneath the pressure. My chest is tight. My breathing is controlled, but every inhale scratches the back of my throat. I remind myself this is just an image, just a symbol. There's no actual pillow in my hands. But I can't escape the truth behind it. I'm killing whatever trust I had left. It's funny how a simple snapshot, just a second of someone's life, can tell you everything you need to know. That's how it started for me. A photo on Viber. A snapshot of betrayal. Before that, I was the kind of man who made checklists of chores, gave my wife a set of tasks before leaving on a business trip, believed in structure and predictability. It sounds dull, I know, but it worked for me. I had a routine, a stable job, a predictable future. And I liked it that way. I thought my marriage was anchored in mutual respect, maybe not the wildest flame of passion, but it was real, or so I told myself. I was wrong. I'm 52, tall enough that my shoulders still look broader than my actual frame. My hair is streaked gray. I wear glasses for reading, and I used to think my biggest insecurity was losing hair in the back, which I'd sometimes check in the mirror with mild dread. Now, hair loss seems like the smallest of my concerns. Everything about me, from the way I set my alarm in the morning to how I fold my laundry, once felt stable. Then came that damned photo. Suddenly, my entire sense of stability was yanked out from under me like a cheap rug on a slippery floor. Let me walk you through how it happened. I travel periodically for work. This time, it was Norway. Before I left her a neat list. Call the plumber about the sink. Pick up the dog's medication. Make sure the gutters are cleared. She made her usual half-joking pout, complaining that I treat her like an employee with tasks, but I shrugged it off. I kissed her on the cheek. No, actually, I didn't. This time, I just said a quick goodbye and left. I told her I might not have great reception. The internet might be bad out there, I said. It was an excuse to keep my distance, a habit I'd formed because somewhere deep down, part of me suspected her emotional shift. But I never imagined it was something this big. On the third day of my trip, I was sitting in a hotel lobby in Oslo. Typical conference setting. Gray carpets, overhead lighting that hurt my eyes, and a stale coffee station. My phone vibrated, and I glanced at the screen. It was a Viber notification from one of those group chats I rarely paid attention to, my wife's circle of friends. I almost didn't open it. But some reflex told me to. Maybe I was bored, or maybe my gut sensed something off. And there it was. A photo. Our bed. My bed. Unmistakable from the patchwork quilt her mother had given us years ago. The camera angle was from behind a man's torso. I could see his broad-backed, tan, toned in a way my own posture might have been 20 years ago, when I still had time for the gym. Next to him, or rather draped over him, was a woman's leg. Her leg. I knew that damn birthmark on the inside of her thigh. The text that followed read, "That was wild last night." And then a random string of emojis. I stared. For a second, my mind went blank. It's like seeing an accident and not registering what it is. My first thought was that it was some sick joke or maybe a mislabeled photo from somewhere else. But I recognized the details. The pillows we bought at a summer sale, the frayed edge on the comforter from when our cat was a kitten. This was my bedroom, my house. I'd given her that bed. I'd slept in that bed for years, never once suspecting it would host this kind of betrayal. And it wasn't even her who sent it. It was her friend Melissa, the chatty one who shares everything in group messages, usually harmless gossip or memes. This time, she messed up big. She was obviously sending my wife something meant to stay private between them. Instead, it went out to the whole group. If it hadn't been for that slip, I might have never known. At first, I tried to calm myself. My heart was racing. I told myself, check the caption again. Maybe it's not what it looks like. But I couldn't unsee that birthmark. Couldn't pretend that was just a random woman. My chest felt a pressure I'd never known, like I was being squeezed from the inside. This was my wife. And the man's back in the photo. I had no idea who he was at that moment, but I knew he wasn't me. My phone pinged with voice messages. They came in one after another. I recognized her voice immediately, shaky and thick with tears. Honey, please don't jump to conclusions. Let me explain. It was just a mistake. I swear, it meant nothing. She said words like freak moment and biggest error of my life. She was crying so hard I could barely make out half of what she said. She kept insisting, I love you, and I'll ruin everything if you leave me. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded those messages to my therapist, Dr. Kaplan, with a note, listen to how hell sounds. My voice, even in that text, was cold. The next hours felt like an out-of-body experience. I sat there, not weeping, not fuming, just numb. Time seemed irrelevant. I canceled my dinner plan with a colleague, retreated to my hotel room, and stared at the city lights outside the window. The phone kept buzzing with more messages from her, but I ignored them. This was my new reality, and I needed to process it alone. I managed to get back home 3 days earlier than scheduled. I didn't tell her. Didn't want her to tidy up or pretend. I just walked through the door, set my suitcase in the hallway, and listened. She was on a call. Didn't hear me come in. Through the crack of the living room door, I heard her whispering. She was speaking to someone, presumably him. Her tone was urgent but playful, like they were planning something illicit. He doesn't suspect a thing, she said. We're smarter than him. That was the line that cut the last cord of restraint in me. I looked at our wedding photos hung on the wall, photos that once made me proud. Now they looked like cheap props in a rigged play. I didn't charge in screaming. I didn't snatch the phone from her hand. I simply turned around, walked up to the bedroom, grabbed my laptop, my passport, and whatever clothes I could fit into a duffel bag. When I came back downstairs, she was off the call. She froze when she saw me, eyes wide, tears already forming like she'd rehearsed this moment. You're home early, she said, her voice quivering. I said nothing. Her mouth opened again, maybe to stammer out an excuse or an apology. I just walked out the front door. She followed me onto the porch, calling my name, but I kept walking. I drove to a cheap motel outside town. The old neon sign flickered over the parking lot, welcoming truckers and men with shame in their eyes. I probably fit right in. Alone in that dingy room, I heard every groan of the air conditioner, every shuffle of footsteps in the hallway. The bed was lumpy, the walls were thin, but it was bliss compared to what I'd left behind. I stayed there a full week. During that week, I discovered something about myself, my capacity for cold anger. I didn't scream or punch a wall. I didn't get drunk or do anything dramatic. Instead, I spent my time gathering facts. I found the lover's social media. He had a wife and 2 kids, a boy and a girl. He posted about them often, painting a picture of an ideal family life. Cookouts, soccer games, vacations at the beach. The hypocrisy made my skin crawl, but it also fueled me. I started mapping out exactly how to break that illusion of his. It wasn't about being petty. It was about truth. He wanted to hide behind this shiny facade, just like she did. Well, I decided I was going to show the truth to everyone who mattered. I waited until he posted a new set of photos of his perfect family. His smiling face was half covered by his daughter's hair as she jumped into his arms. The caption read, "Cherishing every moment with my loved ones." I can still feel the disgust rising in my throat when I think about it. The first call I made was to his wife, Evelyn. I found her number after a bit of digging, public records, a bit of social engineering. She picked up on the second ring, her voice polite, cautious. "Hello." I introduced myself, though my name likely meant nothing to her. Then I said, calmly, "I have information about your husband." I heard a pause. She asked who I was again, her voice tinged with alarm. I said, "He's sleeping with my wife. I can give you proof." Another pause, longer this time. I could feel her breath catching. She demanded details, stammering as she tried to gather her thoughts. I told her to check her phone in 10 seconds. I texted her the screenshots, the photo of my bed, the incriminating messages, everything. Then I heard a strangled sob on the other end of the line. She asked me why I was doing this. I told her, "Because you deserve the truth." Then I hung up. Next, I called my father-in-law. It was dinner time on a Sunday, a moment when their entire extended family gathered around the table for a big meal. I know this because my wife used to drag me there every month, a tradition that sometimes irritated me. But at that point, I saw an opportunity. He picked up. His voice was cheery, probably expecting a typical son-in-law conversation. Instead, he got me, flat and cold. "She's been cheating on me. I have proof. I'm leaving her." He tried to interrupt, to say something about calm down or let's talk about this. I cut him off. "I just wanted you to know who your daughter really is. Ask her about the photos. Have her play you the voice messages if she hasn't deleted them." Then I hung up. I imagined the chaos erupting at that table, the forks clattering onto plates. The image gave me a grim satisfaction, but none of that brought me peace. Sure, I'd exposed them, shattered their illusions, yet I still felt hollow. So I returned to the house one final time, mostly to gather the rest of my belongings. The place was dark when I arrived. I stepped in, flipping the switch. The living room lamp flickered on, illuminating the space we once shared so intimately. There was a tension in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. I saw her in the kitchen, sitting at the table, head in her hands. She must have heard me come in, but she stayed still. I set down a small box and started grabbing what I needed, some files, a few clothes, the leftover items I'd forgotten in my rush. Finally, she rose and approached me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her face looked gaunt, her eyes red and swollen. She tried to touch my arm, but I stepped back. She tried to speak again. I never meant. I cut her off by pulling out my phone. I pressed play. Her voice from those messages, the one she left me while I was in Norway, filled the silence. She winced, hearing her own sobs and pleas echo back at her. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. When the messages finished, I tapped on another file, the voice memo she accidentally left on my phone a few months back, the one that started me suspecting something was off. In it, she was giggling quietly with him about how naive I was. She told him, "He trusts me too much. Sometimes I almost feel guilty." Then more laughter. Hearing it again made my blood run cold. She stumbled back, tears streaming down her face. "Please stop," she begged. Her breathing was louder than her words, a ragged, desperate sound. I clicked pause. The silence hit like a hammer. We locked eyes. I felt nothing in that moment, just a distant sense of finality. She kept whispering, I'm sorry," over and over, like a prayer. I just watched her. The quiet fury inside me pulsed with every beat of my heart. She looked at my face, maybe seeking a hint of forgiveness. But I had none left. If she'd been honest from the start, maybe there'd be a chance. But she lied, manipulated, laughed at my ignorance. And I was done. I walked out of the kitchen without a word. She tried to follow, but I slammed the door between us. In the foyer, I glanced at the old pictures from our wedding, still hanging on the walls. The love in those photos felt like a sick joke now. And I realized that the life we built was founded on a lie, maybe from the very beginning. I stepped into the night, the air cool against my skin. A part of me felt like screaming at the moon. But I just stood there on the porch for a minute, letting the quiet suburban darkness settle around me. Then I left. In the days that followed, I spoke to my therapist, Dr. Kaplan, more often, told her every detail. She asked if I wanted to file for divorce right away, or if I needed time to consider. I told her no. Divorce is the only path now. There's nothing to save here. She nodded, taking notes, occasionally reminding me that vengeance can become its own trap. I listened, but the sense of satisfaction I felt from exposing them was still raw in my veins. I told her, sometimes the truth needs to come out, no matter how ugly it is. She agreed, with caution in her eyes. I also had to consider my own regrets. Had I neglected her somehow? Had I pushed her away with my routines and checklists? Was I too rigid? But then I'd replay that snippet of her voice. He doesn't suspect a thing. We're smarter than him. That was not the voice of a neglected woman. That was the voice of a schemer enjoying her secret. I wasn't perfect, but neither was I responsible for her betrayal. Around that time, I found a small apartment near the edge of town. It's nothing fancy, just a cramped living room, a modest bedroom, and a narrow kitchen. But it's mine, a space free of tainted memories. The neighbors are mostly retirees, so it's quiet. I can hear my own thoughts. I can almost hear my own heartbeat if I sit still long enough. That's where the nightmares started. I'd wake up in a sweat, imagining them together in my bed. The memory of that photo stuck in my mind. Her leg draped over him so intimately, the shadows on his back, the messy sheets I recognized as ours. It's like a brand on my brain. I'd jolt awake, chest heaving, trying to remind myself that I'm out of that house, away from her. In these nightmares, I'm powerless, forced to watch them over and over. Sometimes I think about how quickly lust can destroy everything you believed in. I wonder if she thought about me at all in those moments, or if I was just a footnote in her mind, an obstacle to step around. Mornings were both a relief and a burden. Relief because the dreams ended, burden because I'd start the day recalling the real nightmare. My life had been capsized by her betrayal. That's when I'd text Dr. Kaplan, or look through the notes from our last session. She'd remind me to process, to let the feelings come, to not bury them. She'd say, anger can be constructive if it propels you to enforce your boundaries and reclaim your self-respect. I repeated that mantra like a devotion, half believing it, half hating that I needed it at all. Meanwhile, the story leaked among our friends. People who once saw us as a stable couple were now sending me pitying messages. Some acted outraged on my behalf, others tried to remain neutral, claiming, there must be two sides to every story. But I had the photo, the voice messages. There was only one side that mattered. In a private moment, her best friend, Melissa, the one who'd messed up and sent the wrong photo, called me. She was mortified, apologized 1,000 times, said she never wanted me to find out like that. I told her it didn't matter how I found out. What mattered was that the betrayal happened. Melissa tried to rationalize her friend's behavior, something about midlife crisis or feeling unappreciated. I cut her off. That doesn't justify a damn thing. She went silent. We ended the call on that note. The lover, or as I started calling him, her buddy, was conspicuously silent. He blocked me on most platforms, presumably at the advice of a lawyer or out of sheer cowardice. But his wife, Evelyn, wasn't silent. She reached out once, just to say she was thankful I told her that she was leaving him. She said something like, I'm sorry you had to be the messenger of this pain. But I'm glad I know the truth. It struck me how different her reaction was from my wife's. She faced the truth head-on, raw as it was. Meanwhile, my wife tried to spin a million excuses, half-lies, manipulations. In a twisted way, I respected Evelyn more than I ever respected my wife. That led to a deeper sense of betrayal. How did I end up marrying someone who handles life's crises with half-truths and cunning calls, while a total stranger, Evelyn, showed more integrity under the same circumstances? It's a question that still haunts me. Maybe love blinds you to a person's faults. Maybe I wanted so badly to believe in the stability of marriage that I ignored warning signs. I remembered small moments when her stories didn't add up, or she'd get strangely defensive about harmless questions. I always assumed she was just stressed. Now I see them as red flags I'd brushed aside to preserve the fantasy. Days slid into weeks, each one marked by some new stage of separation. Contacting a lawyer, dividing assets, planning for the divorce hearing. The legal process is slow, methodical, which in some ways gave me time to reflect. But it also kept the wound open. Every form I signed reminded me of the betrayal. The days bled together in a haze of anger, numbness, and fleeting moments of relief, like when I get lost in a baseball game on TV or work on a hobby in the evenings. My job started noticing I was distracted. My boss, a guy I'd known for 15 years, pulled me aside after a staff meeting. "You all right?" he asked, concern in his eyes. I just nodded, forcing a half smile. "Yeah, just some personal stuff." He patted my shoulder. "Take the time you need. Don't let it eat you alive." Easier said than done, but I appreciated the sentiment. Work had always been my refuge, a place where I could be in control. But the lingering thoughts of her in our bed with someone else, of that mocking voice message, kept intruding. They'd strike at random, in the middle of writing an email or analyzing a spreadsheet, leaving me angry and restless. Then came the day of confrontation, one I never planned, but which fate seemed to orchestrate. I went back to the house for more paperwork. She was there. I could hear her rummaging in the bedroom. I walked in quietly, steeling myself. On the dresser, I saw a pile of photographs. Among them were our wedding pictures, the white dress, the smiles. I remembered how proud I was to stand beside her then, how safe I felt. Seeing them now filled me with contempt. She noticed me and froze. We locked eyes, the tension so thick it could have been carved. Her voice was hushed, like she was afraid to speak. "I was looking for documents," she said, gesturing to the piles of papers and photos. I found these." She tapped the wedding pictures. Her voice cracked. "It feels like a lifetime ago." I stayed silent. I wasn't there to talk about memories. I was there for documents. So I grabbed the papers I needed, ignoring her trembling figure. After a moment, she said, "Why won't you at least hear me out?" Her tone was desperate, tears welling up. I turned to her, feeling the fury bubble. "I did hear you out," I said, voice low. "I listened to every pathetic excuse you left in my voicemail. That was enough." She sobbed harder. "It wasn't an excuse," she insisted. "I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what came over me." Then came the meltdown, like she was unraveling from the inside. She sank onto the bed, hugging a pillow as though it might console her. "I was lonely. You were always busy with work, with your schedules. I felt invisible." I clenched my jaw. The gall of her. "So you decided to spread your legs for some random guy because I work late?" I snapped. "That's your justification." She recoiled as though I'd struck her. The words sounded cruel, even to my own ears, but I didn't take them back. Cruel or not, it was the truth of what she did. She stammered. "He paid attention to me. He made me feel young again." I just shook my head, disgusted. "And you made me a fool. You made our marriage a joke." She tried to stand, tried to approach me, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I warned. She stopped in her tracks. The only sound in the room was her ragged breathing, tears streaking her cheeks. My heart pounded so hard I wondered if she could hear it. I wanted to break something, to lash out, but I remembered my therapist's words. "Violence won't heal you." So I stayed still, shoulders trembling with the force of my restraint. "I'm sorry," she repeated, voice cracking. "I never stopped loving you." I let out a bitter laugh, short and hollow. "Don't use that word. You don't even know what love means." She looked like she'd been slapped. I continued, voice cold. "You want to know what love is? It's sacrifice, loyalty, honesty when it's hardest. not screwing around in the bed we shared, then telling your boyfriend we're smarter than him. That's not love. That's betrayal. She dropped to her knees, hugging the pillow like a lifeline, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I watched her shoulders convulse. A small part of me felt pity, but it was drowned by the knowledge of what she'd done. I wanted to walk out right then and there, but my body wouldn't move. I stood there, glaring, letting the silence crush us both. Maybe I needed that final confrontation to seal my decision, to see that there was nothing left but ashes. After what felt like hours, I finally moved, stepping back. "I'll have the divorce papers drawn up soon," I said flatly. She didn't look up, just kept crying into the pillow. "And when this is over, I never want to see you again. Understand?" Her breath caught in her throat, and she nodded through her tears. I walked out, leaving her in that empty, suffocating stillness. Over the next few weeks, the legal machine churned. We divided assets, though there wasn't much dispute. She didn't have the energy to fight. Her father called me once, tried to mediate. I told him politely, "There's no negotiation for what she did." He fell silent. "I understand you're angry, but maybe we can." I hung up. No more words. I'd said my piece. During that time, my mind kept drifting back to the day I found the photo. The sense of shock and heartbreak. It's odd how the human mind replays trauma, like it's searching for an alternate ending that never comes. Dr. Kaplan would say, "You're processing. It's going to be painful, but you'll heal." I wasn't sure if healing meant forgetting. I doubted I could ever forget, but maybe I could learn to live with it. Meanwhile, rumors spread among acquaintances. People texted me, "Is it true?" Or, "I had no idea she was like that." I rarely replied. It was exhausting to rehash. The only person whose reaction interested me was her lover's wife. From what I heard indirectly, she filed for divorce too. Took the kids and moved in with her sister. Good for her, I thought. Let him taste the consequences of his actions. I never spoke to her again, though. We both had enough trauma to deal with. One late evening, while packing the last of my things in my new apartment, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "I deserve this," it said. "I'm sorry. I wish I could turn back time." I knew it was from her. I stared at the message for a good minute, feeling a swirl of emotions: anger, sadness, a tinge of regret for the life we once shared. Then I deleted it. No response. Sometimes at night, I'd think about that moment in Norway, the crisp air in Oslo, the coffee in my hand when my phone buzzed with the message that changed everything. I remember the taste of that coffee, bitter, slightly burned. I remember the exact color of the hotel lounge carpet, a dull gray. It's funny how the mind locks onto meaningless details in moments of heartbreak. That memory always reminds me that life can pivot in a single moment. 1 second, you're sipping coffee, going about your day. The next, your reality is shattered. I started journaling, a tip from Dr. Kaplan. She suggested writing out the events, the emotions, everything. She said, "There's power in seeing your story in black and white. It helps you reclaim your narrative." So I did. Each night, I'd pour my thoughts onto the page. I wrote about the pain, the anger, the numbness, the twisted satisfaction of exposing them, and the slow, grueling process of moving forward. I wrote about the day I first saw her, the day I proposed, and the day she said, "I do." I wanted to see if there was some clue I missed, a crack in the foundation from the start. But that's the thing about illusions. They're only obvious once they're broken. Weeks turned into a couple of months. The divorce proceedings marched on, unstoppable. My lawyer was a sharp woman who took no nonsense. She told me not to engage with my wife beyond the necessary communication about documents. So I didn't. The final hearing date was set for a Tuesday afternoon in a drab county courtroom. I arrived early, sat on a bench in the hallway, swirling my thoughts in my head like murky water. She arrived 10 minutes later, wearing a simple black dress. She looked worn down, older than when we first got married. Our eyes met, but we didn't speak. When the case was called, we stood in front of a tired-looking judge. It was mostly procedural. I answered the questions, confirmed that this marriage was irretrievably broken. She responded in a shaky voice, tears glimmering but not falling. The judge stamped some papers, made it official. That was it. I was no longer her husband, and she was no longer my wife. Funny how years of companionship can be dissolved in a few minutes of legal formality. We walked out separately. She lingered in the corridor, as if waiting for me to say something. I bypassed her, stepped into the sunlight outside. The warmth on my skin felt jarring after the cold sterility of the courtroom. I breathed in deep, trying to let the fresh air fill my lungs, trying to purge the stale bitterness. This was the start of a new chapter, one I never asked for but was forced into. Over the next few days, I told myself I should feel relief. The official ties were cut. I was free. And yet the anger lingered. I replayed the moment of seeing that picture, the texts, the calls I made to expose her and him. Part of me wished I'd done more, something truly devastating. But I reminded myself that it wasn't about revenge. It was about honesty. The truth was out. They had to live with it. Maybe that was enough. I took more sessions with Dr. Kaplan. She kept encouraging me to find healthy outlets. I tried going back to some old hobbies. I used to build model ships in my younger years, patiently gluing and painting pieces until a miniature vessel took shape. It was calming in a way, focusing on each tiny detail. But my hands would shake sometimes, the memory of betrayal creeping in. Over time, though, I steadied. The act of creation, even if it was just a model, gave me a sense of control I'd lost. I also started running in the mornings, a ritual I hadn't done in years. I'm not fast, and my knees complain, but feeling my heart pound in my chest for something other than anger gave me a semblance of power over my own body. The first few runs were miserable, but I stuck with it. Something about the rhythmic thud of my feet on the pavement, the burn in my lungs, reminded me I was alive, still breathing, still capable of moving forward. Gradually, I spoke less about the betrayal. My friends stopped asking, although a few would occasionally check in. My closest friend, Mark, a guy I'd known since college, took me out for a few beers. He let me vent, never tried to offer platitudes like, "It'll be okay." He just nodded, said he understood how I felt. That was enough. Meanwhile, I was still in touch with Dr. Kaplan, who urged me to explore the possibility of dating again when I felt ready. I laughed at that idea at first. The very thought of opening myself up to another person felt insane. But she insisted, "You deserve to know this isn't the end of your story. There can be more." I told her I'd think about it, though deep inside, the idea seemed too soon, too raw. Sometimes at night, I still dreamt of the photo, but the dreams became less frequent. I started to go for entire days without thinking about it. Other times, the memory hit me out of the blue. A smell, a phrase that sounded like something she would say, a random mention of Norway on the radio. But each time, the sting was slightly less intense. Healing is a slow grind, not a lightning strike. Then there was a final coda I didn't expect. One afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed her name. My first instinct was to reject the call, but something made me answer. On the other end, she sounded beaten, contrite. "I've done a lot of therapy," she said, her voice subdued. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I understand how deeply I hurt you. I'm sorry." There was silence. I waited, not sure what to say. She added, "I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know I'm working on myself." I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. "Good," I said quietly. "That's good." And that was it. I ended the call. That was the last time I heard her voice. Maybe she was sincere, maybe not. But it no longer mattered. I was no longer her husband, no longer responsible for her choices or well-being. That sense of detachment felt clean, like a cut that was finally scabbing over. In the weeks following, I continued my routines, one day at a time. The darkness gradually receded, replaced by a cautious hope. I wouldn't say I'm happy now. Happiness feels like a fragile concept after what I've been through. But I am at peace, more or less. I can wake up without a knot in my stomach. I can look in the mirror and see a man who survived something brutal, but survived nonetheless. Looking back, I see a story of betrayal and revenge, yes, but more than that. It's a story of truth. She thought it was a game, that she could manipulate me, keep me in the dark, enjoy her secret fling. She didn't realize I was capable of quiet, calculated action, that I'd be the one finishing the story. And I did finish it, by exposing them for what they were, by refusing to scream or beg, by simply walking away and letting the truth do its damage. In the end, she and her lover realized too late that I wasn't as naive as they believed. Now, when I close my eyes at night, I sometimes picture that pillow again. But instead of suffocating my trust, I see myself lifting it away, letting my illusions breathe their last breath, then discarding them for good. It's done. The betrayal is real, but so is my resolve to keep living. And that, I suppose, is the only ending that matters.